Okay, I think we have gone live. Good afternoon, everyone. I can see a few people have joined already. I'm sure some more will come on, but I will start in the meantime. A big warm welcome to anyone who's just joined. Please note we have muted your microphones for the duration of the webinar, and they will remain mute. So let me start off now. Welcome again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 11th live mobility webinar. My name is Eloise, and I've been with Relocation Africa for almost 8 years now. I'm sure I've worked with a number of you on many different projects. And before that, I think I mentioned previously, I worked as one of our consultants on the ground in Cape Town for over a year. And that was really, I enjoyed it, and it was great training for my current role. I'm responsible for managing destination services with our clients and consultants across the continent of Africa, and I also present some of our cultural training programs. Oh, I think I did that too quickly. The format of this webinar will be as follows. I will talk through the various sections, which all have accompanying slides. During this time, please feel free to type questions in the chat box as you think of them. Doing so will not create a disturbance. At the end of the webinar, I will try to answer as many of your questions as possible. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the replay will be shared with all registrants later this week. Just another reminder, we've muted everyone's microphones for the duration of this webinar. Okay, now we can get going. Just a quick look at the highlights of this presentation. It's not a very long webinar, so we're really just touching the tip of the iceberg with an amazing country like Egypt. Or as we say here in Africa, South Africa, it's just the ears of the hippo. However, we will have a brief overview of Egypt, look at safety aspects, some practical do's and don'ts, and then conclude with some advice on doing business in Egypt. Great. Okay. Egypt, as you all hopefully know, is located in the northeastern corner of Africa and has one of the longest histories of any country, tracing its heritage along the Nile Delta back to the 6th to 4th millennia BCE. Considered a cradle of civilization, ancient Egypt saw some of the earliest developments of writing, agriculture, urbanization, organized religion, and central government. Egypt's long and rich cultural heritage is an integral part of its national identity, which also reflects its unique transcontinental location. It's like a mix of Mediterranean, the Middle East, and North Africa, which makes it so intriguing, actually. Egypt was an early and important center of Christianity, but was largely Islamized in the 7th century. And up to today, it remains a predominantly Muslim country, albeit with a significant Christian minority. Islam is the official religion of Egypt, and Arabic is its official language. With over 100 million inhabitants, Egypt is the most populous country in North Africa, the Middle East and the Arab world, and the third most populous in Africa after Nigeria and Ethiopia. Egypt has one of the largest and most diversified economies in the Middle East, which is actually projected to become one of the largest in the world in the 21st century. And I think they're well on their way there as we speak. Egypt is also a founding member of the United Nations, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Arab League, the African Union, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the World Youth Forum. Okay, let's have a look. So moving on to Cairo, just a brief little overview. The Cairo metropolitan area, with a population of 21.3 million, is the largest in Africa, in the Arab world, and the 6th largest in the whole world. And an additional 9.5 million people live in close proximity to the city. Is massive. Cairo has long been a center of the region's political and cultural life, and is also known as the city of 1,000 minarets. I mean, you can see a few there, because of its preponderance for Islamic architecture. The Egyptian capital also has the oldest and largest film and music industries in the Arab world, as well as the world's second oldest institution of higher learning, the Al-Azhar University. Many international media, businesses, and organizations have regional headquarters in the city, and the Arab League has had its headquarters in Cairo for most of its existence. Yeah, amazing. So we're going to have a brief overview of safety and security. The Egyptian police will do their best to secure every part of the city, but, you know, like anywhere else things can happen, but it's really no more than anywhere else in other parts of the world. One of the best ways to ensure personal safety when traveling to Cairo is to always be aware of surroundings when you're in public. When a location is crowded and it feels unsafe, you know, you have that gut feeling, just listen to your gut and leave the area if it feels too busy or a little bit dangerous, or you just feel uncomfortable. There isn't a large prevalence of violent crimes in Cairo, but tourists should be aware of petty crimes such as purse snatchings, which are really more common. In addition, it is recommended that female tourists should not travel anywhere alone, as they may be, unfortunately, become victims of verbal abuse or sexual harassment. Also, be aware of people who approach you on the street and try to take you shopping or show you sites or places you don't know. Just stick to places that have been recommended to you, or just, you know, make your own plans and stick to those. Also, just something to note, be aware of your surroundings. If you had to cross the streets in Cairo, the traffic is not quite what we are used to in Europe or North America, or for that matter in South Africa or Australia. And cars don't normally stop for pedestrians. Try to be patient and see if there's a gap. And if you do decide to cross, walk, or better even trot across, and then, you know, don't be scared, or else try to cross where there's a traffic light, but there are not that many of them. If the worst comes to the worst, try to stick to the locals and cross the street with them. It can be a bit scary, but they manage and they have a lot of experience in doing so. Actually, yeah, I will get to that one. I will show you a little picture of that later as well. Okay, some cultural etiquette. Next slide, do's and don'ts. So in Egypt, don't wear shorts and sleeveless T-shirts. This will, of course, not be the case if you're visiting Sharm el-Sheikh or Dahab or Marsa Alam, because those are coastal cities, diving resorts, etc. So people are used to that type of holiday clothing, but not in the cities. Don't kiss your partner in the street, even though you really want to. Even a kiss on the cheek might be unacceptable in some areas in Egypt. And don't kiss or hug persons of the opposite sex, even if it's just friend. Shaking hands is okay in general, but obviously with COVID at the moment, we just do the elbows or the feet or whatever. Again, do not cross busy streets alone, same old thing. Wait for someone to cross with you, or ask someone to help you. According to our consultant in Cairo, he said it's better just not to try and cross the street, full stop. Just try and get your taxi or whoever it is to drop you on the right side where you need to be. Don't put your feet on a table. It's really not acceptable behavior, and it might offend somebody. In fact, I find it quite offensive when somebody does that when I'm sitting at a table. Try not to talk to people who approach you in the street or in tourist areas to offer services like city tours or visits to tombs or sites or wherever. It's always preferable to go through and use registered tour operators and agents. And try not to get angry or frustrated when someone is late. People in Egypt are lovely and quite laid back, and you will have to get used to people sometimes being late. They don't do it to upset you. And of course, there is this small matter of traffic. I think people get stuck in traffic jams very regularly. Also, try not to drink tap water. I think even the locals stick to mineral water as far as possible. And then very important, do not drink alcohol in the street. You know, on the street, stick to a restaurant or a bar where it is not, you know, okay to be served alcohol. It's not socially acceptable to drink alcohol in the street. And in some areas, it is actually forbidden by law. And for women, this one applies to women only, I believe. Don't smoke in the street. It's also not considered acceptable. And of course, do not eat, drink, or smoke in public places during daytime during Ramadan. If you're a visitor in the country, you need to show some empathy and respect for the local culture and custom. Okay, so I've mentioned the crossing the street twice now, so I'm just going to show you a picture. Let me just move on. There we go. This is a picture taken from a video to illustrate my point. And I have to add to this, in case Viola gets upset with me, that our consultant did point out that this is downtown Cairo and not all the streets look like this. But you can see there's very little structure to this picture. People just drive and move as they wish, with no clear indication of who's doing what. Okay, now we're going to move on to the do's. It's something better, something more positive. Do leave tips in cafes, restaurants, hairdressers. The wages are generally quite low and people really appreciate it. If you appreciate their service, please leave them a tip. Do bargain in souvenir shops and markets. It's really almost, people really expect you to bargain, especially in the souks and the markets. I think I can speak from practical experience. I think if you go to one of the markets there and you get asked to pay something for something you want and you agree and pay the exact amount, the shopkeeper will probably fall over with shock. That's all part of the whole thing, is to bargain. And it's a nice way to start a conversation, and really people expect it. Do dress modestly, again, and not too outgoing or extravagantly. Do ask locals what the fare is for a taxi ride before taking the taxi, and then agree on that fare with the taxi driver before you take off. If you're using a metered taxi in Cairo, make sure the meter's working before you go. Otherwise, get out and find one where it works. Okay. When you get lost or you can't find somewhere, do try to ask directions from at least 3 different people. The Egyptians are very helpful, and they will often offer to help you even if they don't know where you are trying to go. So people will try to help. So get 3 opinions, then you'll know that you're on the right path. Do take taxis rather than public transportation, especially for women. And take a taxi, whoever you are, if you're alone at night. Careem and Uber are freely available, especially in Cairo. Then, very important, as you can see on the screen, do remember to take off your shoes and cover your head for women when you enter a mosque. There is no negotiation there. And again, very important for everybody, all of us walking around with our phones and taking pictures of everything, do not take a picture without asking permission, please. It's just, in some places, well, if you're taking off places, in some places it's actually forbidden to take photos, but even people can get really upset if you simply point your phone or camera at them and take a picture. So just ask before you shoot. And then mostly, do spend time talking to the people. Egyptians are really interesting, and they're kind, and they have a great sense of humor. And I've worked with them, so I know I've worked with a lovely group of Egyptians for 5 years, and they are wonderful friends. They're warm and friendly. They're also really astute businessmen, by the way. But they have such wonderful cultural backgrounds, very interesting. So don't miss out on that. And do enjoy the country as much as you can. Egypt is not just any country. I'll tell you what they call. Egypt is called El Donya, which means the mother of the world. And then, of course, please, again, do not drink or smoke in public during Ramadan. Questions. Okay, this is just a reminder that if anyone has any questions, just based on what I've discussed, please feel free to type them to me in the chat box so I can address them at the end of the webinar. Hopefully I'm giving you so much information you won't have any questions, but I'll be happy to answer what I can. So let's go on. This is a brief respite while we see what's happening. Just some lovely photographs my colleague Sisipo found of modern Cairo, and then of course traditional, very, very, very old Cairo, the pyramids on the right-hand side, and the camel, nicely decorated. Business culture. Okay. Egyptian business culture does place great emphasis on personal relationships. I think we also do in Africa, mostly. You will find that building rapport and personal trust, these are crucial elements of any Egyptian business venture. So do take the time to get to know your business partners and colleagues. The distinction between professional and friendly relationships is generally held, but the norm is treating business affairs in a personal way is very normal. And more importantly, although this might happen in lots of other places, the personal relationship with business partners is often developed during meals, during sharing food. Which brings me to the fact that hospitality is also a very important element of Egyptian culture, and expect that when you're meeting with colleagues and business associates, you will frequently always be offered coffee and tea, and it is considered polite to accept these offers, even if you do not particularly want a drink. But if you're in a real hurry, you can make your excuses, but then please remember to promise to have it next time and stick to that promise. Personal appearances also important in Egypt. Most workplaces require men to wear suits and ties, and women should dress, again, conservatively. Skirts should extend below the knee and shoulders should always be covered. It is also considered poor form to question someone in a higher position. There is a certain hierarchy. The senior member of a corporate division, delegation, or group of employees always serves as spokesperson in meetings or at business functions. And the highest ranking individual will make the final decision, but he will look for group consensus, he or she, including older, experienced people in your team is recommended. So let's have a look at some do's and don'ts in the business setting as well. So, small presents are generally welcome, but not when you're dealing with government employees. This is really against the law, so please refrain from doing that then. But otherwise, in social settings and business settings, people generally tend to give small presents. For business meals, make sure you have a selection of non-alcoholic drinks available if you invite your colleagues to an event. Do make eye contact when meeting with your Egyptian business associates, especially with your male colleagues. I think you're not supposed to make eye contact for too long with your female colleagues. Looking into someone's eyes and making eye contact is a sign of honesty and trust. Remember, I'm sure most of us are aware of this, but remember that the left hand is considered unclean in Egypt. So unless you are handling something considered dirty, always use the right hand, eat with your right hand, and avoid gestures with the left hand. They may offend. Pointing with your finger at somebody is also considered rude. I think we all think that, don't we? I don't like people pointing at me. So don't cross your legs when sitting, because it can be considered offensive. And of course, don't put your legs on the desk. I have seen that. So it's, again, not very nice thing to do. Businesses are generally open from 8 to 2 p.m. during summer, and from 9 a.m. to 1, and then again 5 to 7 in the evening during winter. So you should try to avoid setting up a meeting on a Friday, and then as well as during Ramadan. It just makes sense to schedule your times better. There are many different greeting styles in Egypt, so it's probably a good idea to wait for your counterpart to initiate the greeting, especially at the first meeting. But of course, now we have different protocols during the pandemic, of course. Normally, shaking hands and exchanging welcoming, polite words without being too formal is the norm. If you can say hello in Arabic, that should please the other party. And it is also usual to address a counterpart by his title, followed by Mr. and his surname or name. The same applies to women, Mrs. or Miss, as appropriate. Now, look at some business meetings. Try to make appointments at least a week in advance and confirm them a day or two before the actual meeting. And really just note that punctuality and respect for deadlines can be approximate. I'm not saying they always are, but they can be. When you are in the meeting, do not expect to have the person's undivided attention. Your colleagues may allow interruptions from other people or even take phone calls during your appointment. And while some of us, from other places, personally may find this infuriating, it is considered impolite for you to prompt for attention, demand attention, or to attempt to shift a topic of conversation. And then also, I think we have the same, again, sorry, but the same thing in Africa, always expect to ask and answer questions about health and family before actually getting down to business. Again, when entering business negotiations, remember that the process will require patience. In many cases, business actions require the approval of government agencies, ministries, or oversight committees. And unlike in most Western countries, business in Egypt tends to move at a slower, sometimes even ponderous pace. So do expect things to take longer if you do business directly, especially if you do business directly with the government. Just another interesting thing that you may want to remember is non-verbal communication is also important. You have to pick up on those little signals. Communication is usually indirect, and it can be hard to say no or voice lack of interest directly. In general, in Egypt, a refusal will be expressed by a big smile and a very non-committal answer like, God willing, inshallah, or tomorrow, bukra. Most Egyptian businessmen speak English, French, or both, but they do actually prefer, if you have somebody with you, have an Egyptian representative so they can also communicate for clarity in Arabic. Egyptians also tend to be in close proximity while talking, so make sure not to back away if you feel that your personal space is being invaded. And please note that smoking is a widespread habit. Yes, I think every single Egyptian I ever worked with smoked, practically chain smoked. So if you do smoke, please accept a cigarette that is being offered and also offer some in return. We're back to the bargaining. Bargaining is an integral part of the Egyptian culture. And one should avoid accepting a proposition without bargaining, as it's viewed as a sign of weakness. They do expect you to bargain before getting to any conclusion on anything. And then the last point that we've covered, it is advisable to have an Egyptian representative, just to clarify if there are any unclear points. Okay, moving on to the next slide. So, make sure that you have a number of business cards printed with your name, title, business address, and full contact information. And your cards should be double-sided with information in English on the one side and Arabic on the other. And remember, business will not proceed until you've established that personal rapport. The social side of the deal goes hand in hand with the work-related one. And just as you might get interruptions or people answering calls, also don't be surprised if voices are raised sometimes. Not an argument, just the way that Egyptians discuss matters. And again, yes, that is how it always goes. There's always, it sounds as if they're having a violent argument, but it's actually just chatting. I think I seem to remember that in Greece that happens quite a bit as well, as in most of those Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, Northeast African countries. And lastly, yes, welcome topics of conversation actually should perhaps always include Egyptian achievements, ancient and modern, whatever you can think of. And you should preferably not engage in any political discussion, especially around the subjects of Palestine, Israel, or Islam. Okay. Right, we're going on to the last section because we've just had the month of Ramadan all over the world. We thought we'd just have a look at doing business during Ramadan. Ramadan is the holiest month for Muslims everywhere and the 9th month of the Islamic lunar calendar. It moves backwards by about 11 days each year and begins when the new moon is sighted. It is a month of reflection and fasting during daylight hours, and when Muslims are not allowed to eat, drink, or smoke during daytime hours, as long as there's some light in the sky. This, of course, does have an impact not only on personal lives, but on professional ones as well, with workers staying up late to break their fast and then getting up early so they can eat before daybreak. Office hours are usually significantly reduced during Ramadan. Most businesses will close around 2 p.m. and many companies will allow half days during Ramadan to allow their employees to spend time with their families during this holy month and to ease the burden of fasting during business hours. It is or has been estimated that the productivity of workers declines in the holy month by 35 to 50% as a result of shorter working hours and change in behavior. Government institutions and the public sector also can all but shut down for the month, while private sector bodies often delay important decisions to a time when everybody is back to operating as normal. Ramadan finishes with the holiday of Eid al-Fitr, and many businesses mark this with official holidays, and Egypt is no exception. And there's normally a lot of activity as people traditionally visit families to celebrate. I don't think they had such big celebrations this year due to COVID, sadly, but we will hopefully go back to normal. It's a time for exchanging gifts and being with family and friends, and Eid can last anywhere from 3 to 10 days. So you can sort of expect practically a total shutdown. And lastly, on the slide here, some key considerations: try to stick to business in the morning, give up on the lunch and coffee meetings for the month. If you're sharing an office, try to have a separate space for non-fasting colleagues to eat. Dress and behave modestly, very important. And most important, extend greetings of the season. Ensure you wish your network a Ramadan Mubarak. There we go. We just some more pictures for you to look at. We are now reaching the end of the webinar, and I will shortly be answering any questions you may have. If you have yet to ask something, please type a question to me now. And if the question is too difficult for me to answer, I will actually refer the query back to our local consultant, and we will get back to you. If you think of anything a bit later on, please feel free to send us an email or just check, and we will respond to any questions with feedback after the presentation. Okay, I'm just going to wait a few moments to see if people have any questions right this minute. And I really hope that you got some takeaways, positive takeaways that you can be useful to you from this short overview and presentation on Egypt and Cairo specifically. Oh, Nick, I see you have no questions. How nice. Thank you for the thank you. Glad you were on the call, on the webinar. I'll give it another minute or so, and then we will move on. And I see we're practically on perfect timing. We were aiming for a 30-minute slot, so it doesn't take too much time out of your busy days. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I think we'll move on. There you go. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. In the next week, a recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you will receive a direct link to the recording. And please feel free to share this with any of your colleagues who could not attend today. And if you think of any who might enjoy future webinars, please let them know they're welcome to request sign up by emailing us via marketing@relocationafrica.com. And some more lovely pics that Sisifo found for us of the traffic again, and the souks, and some lovely government building. So there we go. I thank you again, and shukran to everybody for attending. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all a great remainder of the week ahead. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you at the next webinar, I hope. Thanks again.